Hey class, my name is Harrison Woods, and this is my lecture on the U.S. Prohibition era from 1919 to 1933. And this lecture is tailored towards grade 11, United States history and the government. So to begin, this is just a brief overview of the main objective, the Common Core standards, and the methods of instruction. So the main objective is for the primary goal of helping students remember and identify the main reasons for the Prohibition era, to define and explain essential vocabulary phrases, and to evaluate positions of organizations that participated in this era. The Common Core standard is power, authority, and governance. And the method of instruction is, along with watching this 5-minute lecture video, there will be a 5-question quiz at the end. And lastly, in class the next day, students will complete a worksheet and paragraph activity tying in this information. All right, so to begin, what was the Prohibition era in the U.S. and why did it start? So in October 1919, Congress passed the Volstead Act, which initiated a ban on alcoholic beverage nationwide. And consequently, the 18th Amendment put this act into place and officially illegalized the manufacture, transportation, and sale of alcohol nationwide, with the country going dry at midnight on January 17th, 1920. And the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Anti-Saloon League were at the forefront of this prohibitionist struggle for many years. And they created a very strong alliance on the specific anti-alcohol topic towards regional, state, and national governments. Nicknamed the Dries, these were supporters who framed the conflict as one of public morality and health, and the opposers were the Wets. All right, next, why was prohibition difficult to enforce? It was incredibly challenging for numerous reasons. The first being that the government just overall lacked the resources and the motivation to attempt to police laws in every town, city, and state. And as a result, they lost $11 billion in tax income during the Prohibition era. And the legalization and enforcement of this entire law costed well over $300 million. So very expensive. Next, we're going to go over the positives. The positives of the Prohibition. Many men were very motivated to work and spend more money on their family, kids, and wife rather than alcohol at the bar. There were careless alcohol related injuries that decreased significantly. And as we'll see later in this lecture, crime did actually increase, but alcohol related violence did decrease. And also, it raised moral virtues among many families from abstaining and drinking liquor. The negatives of the prohibition. So right here, I've pictured Al Capone. So you'll see, we'll get into it, but he was a famous mobster during this era. To begin, the first negative was bootlegging, which was just the illegal manufacturing and sale of alcohol during this time. And as a result from bootlegging, hundreds of speakeasies popped up in towns and cities where these drinks were sold illegally and hidden bars and clubs. And then within these speakeasies, there was a lot of gang and mob violence through bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution. And right here, when we talk about Al Capone, he was the most famous mobster during this time who pled guilty to all these charges. And tax evasion as well. And during this era, when he was bootlegging, he made close to $100 million per year. So very hefty sum. Lastly, we're going to go over how did the Prohibition era eventually end in America. So looking at this poster, it ended December 5th, 1933. And just overall quickly lost a lot of public favor in the early 1930s because due to bootlegging and these speakeasies, sobriety failed to be enforced effectively nationwide, and it did cost billions of dollars for the government. And lastly, through the efforts of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he printed the 21st Amendment to the Constitution, which officially abolished the prohibition and allowed for the sale and consumption of alcohol once again. And then lastly, we go through the 5-question assignment. So in October 19, which act, keyword here, is initiated? The ban on alcohol beverages to be prohibited. And the answer is the Volstead Act. So that's in the very beginning of the lecture. Next, which persons or groups were at the forefront of the prohibitionist struggle for numerous years? That was also in the beginning. It is the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Anti-Saloon League. Next, which of the following was a negative in society during the Prohibition era? This one's pretty straightforward. The answer is 3. Through hundreds of speakeasies where alcoholic drinks were illegally sold and hidden in bars. And then lastly, what were the names of the supporters of the Prohibition era? This was also in the beginning of the lecture, and if you were paying attention, it were the Dries.